Hello, welcome to The Balancing Act, the interview series that takes a behind the scenes look at the world of business, exploring how entrepreneurs, executives, team leaders have succeeded and what they've learned through the process. I'm your host, Cary Shields. Today, we're joined by Randall Stevens. He's quite a busy guy. He is the founder of ArcVision. He is the CEO of Avail. He's also a part-time instructor at the University of Kentucky, their School of Business. Randall, thank you for joining the Balancing Act.
Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. So if you would, why don't you tell us a little bit about Randall and how you got so busy doing all these things?
Yep. Depends on how far you want to go back. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky in the in Pikeville in the mountains of Eastern Kentucky. And my joke is that when I turned 18, I rolled out of the hills and made it as far as Lexington. Went to UK to school. Started out studying engineering. I'm 56 years old, going on 57. And so I started college in 1985. So I was interested in computers, really software. I was that perfect age to be, first generation really with a personal computer and, playing, I say playing, learning and kind of spending my youth, high school years working around that. And so when I came to school, I thought that's what I was going to do. Unfortunately, I was probably too early. There wasn't such thing as computer science then, so they put you in electrical engineering, right? As soon as you would say the word computer, they put you in electrical engineering.
Okay.
So for me, right, I got, that was where I started my, post-secondary education was in that. And, I was always good in science and math and all of that, but it took about 3 semesters and declining grades and fraternity and girls and all the other things that come along with, a new college experience for me to figure out like, hey, I am not going to make it through, 4 years of this. I had, very little interest. It was like, you're doing circuits and you're doing all this stuff. I'm like, this is not what I thought I was signing up for. So I ended up switching actually, fortuitously to architecture, which was also one of my kind of design was always one of my kind of passions. I always thought I wanted to be an architect and then kind of convinced myself to go into computer, science.
Okay.
But anyway, I ended up switching to architecture. Long story short, right, that was a 5-year program that I started my junior year. So it was like I had a long undergraduate career, graduated in 91 and had, during that time then in the late 80s had combined, my interest in the computers and what was going on in architecture and design. 3D graphics was, a hot thing. So that became my thing was like, so I started a company called ArcVision right out of school. So I, never had a job, worked plenty, but never had a job.
Sure.
I'm probably the proverbial unemployable person, right? Because I've just always, done my own thing. But that company started as a services business doing high-end 3D graphics for basically anybody that would pay me, but trying to focus around the industry in the architecture and engineering construction industry. And it grew it. It was a learning experience from scratch about what that looked like. But by the late, I developed some technology in the mid 90s that sat on for a couple of years for business partner reasons, and then ended up kind of parting ways in late 97 and went 100% in the software development direction. In 1998, we launched our first product, took off. First you have to go back in time, right? For those that are old enough to remember those days, it was like internet was new, selling things on the internet was new, using a credit card, taking a credit card transaction electronically was all brand new.
Yeah.
But, ended up having a product that, I saw the light. It was like having, anybody that's run a service business knows the ebb and flow. You either have enough work or not enough work, and you're always begging people to send you their last payment and to get paid, and receivables are always a problem and all those things.
Yeah.
So as soon as I was in a business that was like, I can do a credit card transaction and sell software to anybody around the world 24 hours a day and the money's in my account in 24 hours. It was like, holy cow, right? This is this is a way more interesting, business to be in. So I
Yes.
basically, as that began to take off, intentionally killed off the services business. And so I've spent the last 25 years basically developing software and technology that's used in the architecture, engineering, construction market, which is where Avail, this company now plays as well.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at the Arc Vision website to look at the product offering, and just so I'd have something to bring to the interview. And I can't say that I could describe what you have out there, but what I did wonder is, which is normally an easy way of describing the product, is getting the entrepreneur to say who is the customer of Arc Vision.
Yep. Yeah, so Arc Vision, the original company, was really focused in 3D graphics technology
Okay.
in the architecture and engineering space. So there's a lot of 3D visualization that goes on in those design processes.
Mhm.
So back in the 90s, the technology that we developed really attacked some very, I'll call it frail parts of that process of being able to do those things. So we developed a content technology and a rendering capability that solved a bunch of problems. Back when the compute power was not what it is today, and the
Today,
gaming
yes.
graphics cards weren't today, we developed a technology that helped to make things more realistic. We had products that were helping to make all the organic trees, foliage, people, all the soft things are actually the hardest things to render,
Sure.
make it look realistic in computer graphics. And the just from a business standpoint, like I said, the idea that you could have a piece of software that you could market globally and have people go to a website and purchase it was, that was a new thing.
Yeah.
And, so it was like, I'd wake up, go to office in the morning and find that there was, a handful of orders that were from South Korea or Germany or, all over
Yeah.
the US. So we have customers in like more than 100 countries around the world. And so it really, and, that's what I was going to say about, we were talking before we started recording this interview, like, even though my businesses are based here in Lexington, Kentucky, very few of my customers are here. All my customers are
Wow.
somewhere else, which has made it nice. It's like, because people will ask, like, why are you in Lexington? And it's like, well, my customers are always somewhere else, so it doesn't really matter where I am. And
Right.
but it's been great, and it's allowed me to travel. I've gotten to travel all around the world over the last 20 years around this business, and just meet lots of great folks and work with other companies. We partner with a lot of other tech companies, so it's a real ecosystem, and we have a
Oh,
very
neat.
yeah, it's like you can't do, it's a complex ecosystem of stuff that's going on. So you have lots of partnerships, and you're doing development work with
Mhm.
partners, and
Mhm.
you just always have to have an outlook of, are we doing our part to help the industry propel our customers, help solve these problems. And it's not like you can do it all. So you have to like figure out how what you're doing plays into that entire ecosystem, which has been great.
Absolutely. So, what inspired the thought of Avail? How did you come to think of Avail and start Avail? What triggered
Yeah,
that?
so Avail, so what Avail does is we basically have software that's used inside, I'll just say characterized as large architecture and engineering firms around the world. We help manage, we use the word content, but files and data that's used, mainly reusable assets. So when they're designing
Oh,
large commercial buildings, you can imagine this as like a kit of parts. It's a lot of things coming together to make that design. And most of them are designing in 3D. It's not just drawing 2D drawings anymore. So there's 3D models and all of this data coming together to design, every building that you're going into, a commercial building is probably designed in this way today.
wow.
So what we do is our customers use Avail software platform to manage all that and get to all that information inside of their operation. So we literally have the largest firms in the world architecture firms in the world, right? With thousands of employees that are using our product to get to and organize and reuse all that information.
Mhm.
That product grew out of the other company, ArcVision. So ArcVision, you can think of, was focused in 3D visualization and content.
Mhm.
And what my kind of backstory was, Avail came about naturally because my claim is anybody that's developing software ends up in the content management business by force, because if you're producing information, you end up, trying to figure out how to organize it, get back to it, and do all those things. So what
Yeah.
grew out of that problem set and us actually trying to solve those problems was, this realization from my vantage point was, we end up, even though this is our specialty, we end up spending just as much time on this other part of the problem. And we're not alone. It's like every software company out there has got the same. And the what ends up happening is every software company ends up doing their own, you know, poor version of content management. So
Okay.
then inside of just to give you a sense of scale, inside of our customers' operations, it's not unusual for these firms to use between 100 and 200 different software applications in their workflows. So hundreds of, 100 plus software applications being used to accomplish all this work. And if every one of them's got a different way to manage its information, you can imagine what a mess that is. So
Oh, yes. Okay.
so we built Avail to become this common core content management platform inside of a firm that knows how to work with all of these other applications and software. Then that solves two problems. It solves our customers' problem of, I don't want to go to 50 different, 100 different places for this information. And then ultimately, this will play out over time, but it relieves the software companies from having to go spend 50% of their time working on that core problem. So our goal was,
Right.
can we become this kind of common content management layer that's helping to solve some of these core problems? So we're 7 years into the market. That's may sound like a long time to other people, but like for me, that's like, okay, we've just started, right? I call it phase one. We're kind of at the end of phase one and getting ready to enter phase two, right? Which is another, next
Yeah.
in your journey. So
That's really great. That's great. And thank you for sharing that. And it makes sense. I can only imagine anything like if you refer to um, the design of a building. I believe that the big box DIY stores now for like home maintenance and home stuff, I believe that they have some sort of process where, and this is taking it down to a lower scale. So I can see where, what you're describing would be very usable, in someone who's designing a building, and could also be usable all the way down to an entity providing some similar service to someone walking in saying, yeah, I want to design my new kitchen. And yeah, here you go. Because of 3D graph. I mean, there's so many entities out there giving the service, and it's shocking when you see what, like, as just a recipient of this kind of technology, it's always like, whoa, that looks just like my kitchen. That looks
yep,
just like, yeah. So it's really amazing. And so
evolving
Avail,
quickly.
when did you start Avail? 7 years ago, basically.
The product launched commercially in the first quarter of 2017. We were working on it for a couple of years before that launch, developing the tech. And but we're 7 years into the market now,
Yeah.
customers. So it's been a good ride. We kind of this company's been largely focused on North America, but because our customers are the largest multinational firms, they're doing work all over the world. So
Very
we've
cool.
seen, just to give you a sense of scale, our customer base, we've seen, because of where we sit in these workflows, we see the projects and all that, but there's been like more than, over the last 30 months, like more than 45,000 projects and these are all commercial projects. So
Right.
it's a lot. And just another stat, these little posters I've got on the wall, every year we do I don't have the newest one. We've got a new one for 2023.
Yeah.
We do a little infographic every year that just kind of talks broadly about the data, but just another sense of scale, our customers are putting new information into the Avail platform for management at the rate of about 17,000 files a day to get added into the platform, right? So it's a lot of information and data that's moving around that we're helping to manage.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is very cool. Yeah. How's it feel to have achieved that?
Oh, it's fun. It's rewarding, and we're a small company. We've got 15 people that are here, and all but one are here in Lexington. We've got one employee that's in Chicago right now, but that I think that's the most rewarding part is that you can do things that are impactful with, it doesn't take, it doesn't take 100, you don't have to have 1,000 people to do this. You can have a small, sharp group of people working on a problem like this. And,
Yes.
and then, most people are surprised that we're here in Lexington, right? It's like, why are you there? It's like, well, why?
Well, why not?
Right? Why not? So
Yeah.
I'm wearing, this is another brand. We do some professional development series called Confluence for the industry. So
Okay.
one of the things that we started doing, that we've just did our 5th one this past fall, we bring people to Kentucky. So we bring design tech leaders from all over the world, and they all come to Lexington once a year. And it's a curated invite-only event, and we
Oh,
theme
wow.
it and talk about some of these issues. And that's always a lot of fun too, because they never would have they never would have had a reason to be in Kentucky unless they, lived up north and were driving through on their way to Florida or,
Right.
something.
We're curious
It's,
about the bourbon industry.
yeah, well, we take them on the bourbon trail and we have a lot of
Good job.
social events and stuff, but they get here and they're just blown away. They're like, I had no idea. It's just a great place to live, great community. And
Mhm.
so, I have a lot of pride in that we're able to, do the things that we do, service people around the world, and then, you know, help people understand that there's actually interesting stuff that goes on, that comes out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Good on you. Good. Yeah. On behalf of Kentucky, thank you. And that's a great contribution, to bring people in. It always is. So, I was curious, you started in 17, I get a lot of business conversations like this, and many being more service and front end business models. COVID came and leveled them. Did COVID have any slowing down, or did it explode what Avail does?
Yeah, good question. It actually slowed us down. We were growing, pretty rapidly right up to COVID, and then it kind of flatlined. We, without getting into too many details, we normally have long-term contracts with our customers, so we didn't see like a huge drop in revenue, which was good. We had enough money to maintain through it, but what happened was growth stopped, and the reason the growth stopped was all of our customers were spending their resources not in optimizing and kind of adding the kind of technology that we have to their operation. They were actually figuring out, how do we completely switch from people being in the office to people being at home. So there was a lot of
Mm.
IT infrastructure spend and just attention, for
Mhm.
about 12, 18 months, where it was just like all hands were on deck to basically break workflows and figure out how all this was going to work.
Mhm.
And it took we saw it in the data, about 18 months, and then it started to climb back out. And a lot of the firms in this industry, the big firms laid off between, we saw 20 to 30% of their workforce got laid off in that time.
Right.
They started then bringing them back, right?
Right.
But it was a very disruptive time. But our timing just happened to be pretty good about the situation we were in, that we could weather it and come out the other side of it. So,
Very good. Very good. So if you would, what would you say was, um, a key moment for Avail, if not, COVID, but what was a key moment, or a tipping point, as we might say, for Avail?
um, I mean, we, one of our largest customer is the largest architecture firm in the world. And, It's a firm called Gensler, and they have like 7,000 employees. So it's a big architecture firm.
Pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good size firm. And studios all around the world, 60 studios around the world. They were literally one of our first customers, first quarter that the product was available. But that wasn't by accident. I had started the conversation with them when it was just a idea in my head. Like I've got data to prove it as far back as like 2014, when I was just
Okay.
trying to figure out, like, is there a market? Is this a problem worth solving? Yada, yada, yada. So I had early conversations with them. I knew people, I had a little bit of the luxury of being in the industry and, different angle, but new people. And so as we developed it, right, we involved customers, potential customers in the development process as
Development.
early as possible. And we went into beta period for about a year, letting them, test things and give us feedback. And so heavy involvement in that. And then, it's the business model in this world is all what's called SaaS, software as a service, or it's a subscription model. So
Yeah.
we're always, trying to be, on top of what are the latest business models. So it's a SaaS business model, recurring revenue. We get paid annually up front, so it's great for cash flow,
Yeah.
and those kind of parts of the business. But it's also weird to get, whenever you're starting something, to get like the number one customer that you want to get to be like a customer. That's a little bit rare, but it was, um, one, it told us, it was a signal that what we're doing is important. And obviously when you go out there and you want to market, it's a little bit of a catch-22. We have to be careful to, not all firms are that big, or, that large. Everybody knows them. So you have to be a little bit careful, because somebody that's a smaller firm may go, well, that's just for the big guys, not for us. So there's a little bit of balancing act from that. But, we've got sole practitioners that use our software all the way up to one of the largest firms in the world. The business is concentrated in the larger firms. But that was probably, just a critical moment, just of affirmation, and, that, hey, this business, we're gonna figure this out. There's a lot of work to do, but we're gonna figure this out. And that team, have great relationship with that team at that company, and they're in their third 3-year contract with us, so it's like
Awesome.
an ongoing development efforts. And we do, I'm up at one of their offices in Chicago at least once a year, visiting with them in person, and talking about what we're thinking about, but also trying to learn what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
Try to do a lot of try to get out and talk to a lot of, we do a lot of via Zoom, but we also then try to physically
Yeah.
go and visit. So
Yeah. Yeah. What a model, this kind of meeting, and totally from, in my experience, totally from the COVID period, and it's been very helpful. So you're very nimble, 15 employees at Avail, and a lot of companies, doing what I do, I meet companies, and they're often in that period where they're like trying to, they're seeing problems, and a logical gut reaction to a lot of problems is, let's throw people at it. Let's just buy more seats and fill the seats. And it takes, what often happens when you just throw bodies at a problem is you create unrewarding positions that people really struggle with keeping. And then, so now you've created turnover. You've created the constant in and out. So, how did you know to stay nimble, or what's your process of that thought, if you can share, how
sure.
do you go about thinking about, well, how many seats, what seat, et cetera?
The first thing that comes to mind is, cash is king. So you got to make sure that you've got the money to keep the operation moving.
Yes.
And when you're, I told you I teach, and you said in the intro, I teach an entrepreneurship class that I've been doing for several years at the University of Kentucky. And, you know, part of the balancing act when you're starting something new is ultimately you want to hopefully find something that one, there's a customer for, and
Yes.
it never, you know, it never grows fast enough. You can always point to there's always these outliers that are these great
Yeah.
fantastical stories that, you know, are runaway trains, but
Yeah.
most of the time it's not a inflection curve. It's just this nice steady, you know, kind of growth that's
Yeah.
way more typical of a business, including ours. And you know that balancing act is, look, it's gonna cost you, especially in a business like this. You're losing money while you're trying to grow, but just because
Mhm.
it's the nature of the beast. So it takes cash and money. We had to raise some money. I couldn't do this all out of cash flow and on my own, so raise some outside money. But you try to keep that under control, and
Mhm.
then it's this, you know, hey, you know, we've got to grow with the opportunity. You're going to add people. I'm sure that, I mean, we stretch the existing resources as much as you can, and then at some point it's like the only way we can add more resources is to find more customers and add more customer money, right, coming in. I
Yeah.
like to say there's nothing greener than customer money. It's the best money coming in. It's a signal that you're doing something that people want. And ultimately
Yeah.
that's the fuel that allows you to hire and add to the team and
Yeah.
upskill and do all the things that you want to do for your company and your team. So that those are all really, you know, those are 101 kind of things that you have to do. If you're in a services business, it's a little bit different, right?
Mhm.
You're in a you're in a you have a company that's a little bit more of what are the unit economics of a person doing work or doing a service or providing that service. You may have some overhead, right, cost that
Mhm.
goes into that, but it's usually minimal. Like a company like ours has really great margins. Like our gross margins are 93%,
Right.
but the cost is like 100% headcount, engineering team and headcount. So you got a really high, you know, payroll,
Okay.
and you're always having to develop and innovate. So you've always got this, you're keeping that under control. With a services business, you know, you should be able to figure out much more quickly whether you're making a profit. I mean, ultimately
Sure. Mhm.
you can do that maybe from day one. Here's what I'm going to charge a customer for what we're going to do for them. There should be enough money left over that's a profit from that. And then the question is, how much do I put into marketing or go out and to get another client? Okay, I've outdone my capacity. I'm going to add to the team so we can service more, right? So you kind of got that balancing
Mhm.
act. But those businesses, just the mechanics of them are just much different, and you should be able to see and have built-in kind of profitability from day one. For a company like what we were doing, this is why you have to go out and raise money. It's while you're growing, the more, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive. The more successful you are in a tech kind of company, the more money you're going to lose in the early days because you're trying to grow and
Yeah.
capture market share as fast as you can go. So it's
Yeah.
usually kind of opposite. Yeah, revenue's growing, but expenses are higher. So you're like digging this hole, and at some point
Yes.
it kind of pops out, right? And you begin making money. So not to
Yeah.
get into too much detail about that, but
So,
you have to understand your business and what kind of business you're in and what
mhm.
the mechanics of it are and the unit economics of it are and all those types
Yeah.
of
It's all, I often find that it's especially for the entrepreneur, that's the thought is in reverse. It's, look, I'm going to do all the service. And then when I get the money, then I'm going to invest and go get the bigger market share. And what often happens is they get, they got a plan for that, and it's a 3 month plan or a 6 month plan or a 1 year plan. But that plan period, it comes and goes, and they're buried alive in the service. And the market has found a whole new way of finding that, obtaining that service. And they've not seen where the market has gone because they've been too busy in the
Yep.
service. Yeah. And it's hard. It's really hard for them, but balanced by, like what you said, the resources that you can go out and acquire. I know I've known a lot of businesses that were like, so first things first, we got to get, investors and resources and borrow money. And they go out and get all of that. And it's almost like the person who just does the services somehow, in a much shorter time than they imagine, they run through their resources. And now they're in just desperate. It's interesting, and it's a hardship. It's it's a heartbreak for a lot of them. I'm sure you've experienced it. I'm sure you've
Yeah,
taught it, known others, and yeah,
all my students the last 10 years I've been teaching this class could tell you that I've got this little drawing that I it was in a book called Business Model Generation. But the first time I saw it, I'm like, it's like the perfect encapsulation of this journey. And it's basically like a squiggly line that as you get to the right begins to thin out and become a straight line. And it's about that in the early stages, there's a lot of uncertainty. Like it's full of uncertainty. It's like, here's the hypothesis. Here's what I think this business is. Here's what I think the customer is. Here's what I think we should charge for it. Here's how I think we should deliver it. And those are
yes,
all just guesses until you go out and test it. And that's where the time comes in. And then at some point, you kind of got it figured out that there's a market and the way you're going to service that and add value to it. And then you've really got a business. What I like to describe though is if you pour money onto this too early, you may not know where to spend those resources. So it's a paradox that you can actually have too much, you can have too much money or too much resources too early in the process, and it's not good for the process because you will focus on spending the money, which means hiring people or doing things that maybe aren't the right time. So it's this is full of paradoxes, and it's like you got to be around people that have done it that can kind of warn you, and then you'll probably still do it again, and everybody makes mistakes. It's like, I do the same. It's like I can go preach this stuff and then turn around and make the same mistakes myself and go,
sure,
I
yeah,
knew better. Why didn't I? But it's a contact sport, right? And
yeah,
luckily a lot of what I found is a lot of people who've done this and are entrepreneurs. They love to talk about it. There's no secrets. It's like this stuff's so hard that nobody is going to steal your idea or
yeah,
it's like, man, it's a grind. Yeah. But it's a you love it. It's like you wouldn't do anything else, right? Like,
yeah. What would you say to someone who's thinking, they just think inside themselves, I think I want to start a business? What would you tell them?
um, it kind of goes back to the old, are entrepreneurs born or can you learn it or is it innate? I go back and forth. I think I was always probably just, I can look back, now that I've tried to kind of study it, I can
Hmm.
look back at my own journey and who I was. I was always I was that kid that when everybody was like, does anybody want to? And I just raised my hand, right? So I was always, like,
Right. Yeah.
whatever, always, trying to take advantage of opportunities, I would
Yeah.
say. So I think there's probably some of, that's probably an innate thing that makes, allows people to kind of do the kinds of things I do. The it's nobody, it's not easy. And it's not, what I would say is if the reason that you're going to do it is to make money, don't do it. Because it is too long and too hard, and
Yeah.
it'll be too confusing, and you will give up way before the money ever shows up.
Shows up.
So that'd be the advice. But if you've got a problem that you think and you can't get it out of your head, like you find, even if you got a day job and there's just something that you're like, I think about this constantly,
Hmm.
that's the type of person that it's like, just go for it. I mean, the worst you could do is fail. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You can go get try it. Why not?
Right.
But don't think it's going to happen. Rarely does it, you're going to have a lot of gut check, like, oh, what did we get ourselves
What have I
into?
done? Yeah.
What have I done? And it takes years. And so if you're not, I always say, if you're not committed just assume it's going to be a 5 to 10 year journey to even know if it's really going to work. And
Yes.
if that's the first gut check, if you're not willing to say, wow, you know, the rewards may not even be evident until, 5 to 10 years into this thing, then probably it's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very well said. You have a lot of very pragmatic answers. I mean, it just screams to just that kind of common sense that, business needs. Those large corporations, they have a different element because there's so many humans, involved in it. I still believe that there's that pragmatic thought somewhere in there where it's, they've got to work it through. What you're saying absolutely speaks to anyone starting off or has just started off, because it is a haul, and you have to want to do it over wanting the end result. It's kind of like, wanting the journey over the destination, really. I think you're spot on there. And I think that's good advice. It shows that you're teaching young business people on a regular basis, because I'm sure they have a million ideas and a million reasons, to think about it in the first place. And yeah, so if they have
I
some sort
was,
of thought, they
I was just
probably
going to say, I describe, one of the things I try to encourage is everybody's got ideas, right? Ideas,
uh-huh.
the healthy thing is that, if you're, I'll tell you how I think about it. It's like I've got ideas and things going all the time. My assumption is if I'm thinking about it, there's 50 or 100 other people thinking about the same thing. Then the difference is an entrepreneur will actually act on it instead of just keep talking about it. So that's one distinction for
Mhm.
everybody who's thinking about these things. Because usually it's not they're rarely are like epiphany moments. They're usually a conflation of a lot of things that are happening, and the business climate changing, or technology's changing, or whatever, that's going to now allow whatever it is you're thinking about
Right.
to maybe take hold, or have value in the market. But it's what I tell the students is like, ideas, you're going to have ideas every day. You can do that as an exercise. I'm going to make up 10 ideas every day and just write them down. And then the question is, which ones are good ideas? And just because it's even a good idea doesn't mean you can turn it into a business. That's another learning, is like,
Hmm.
usually something, a rule of thumb is it has to be 10x better than something else to get somebody to change an old habit. So you can improve on something, but if it's an incremental improvement, it's tough. You're probably going to have a tough time building a business. So you usually have to have some, like, I just always say, an order of magnitude. It has to be a 10x.
Right.
Then if you can show a 10x, now you can probably go out and commit either 10x cheaper, 10x faster, 10x better, 10x whatever that metric
Yeah.
is that you're going to do. But if it's like 1.5x or 2x, you're going to have a hard time. It's just
Right.
hard to get people to not do what they've been doing. That's a momentum that is just very hard to overcome. And
Okay.
but back to the ideas, I always try to encourage the students, like, fall in love with the process, not the idea. Because if you begin to learn
Hmm.
how to evaluate this stuff, and to think about taking an idea that you think is good and then
Mhm.
working through those early stages to see if it really is valid and validate it, you can do that over and over throughout your life, right? It's like you're not going to just have one idea or be able to work on one. And some things you work on are not going to work out. I've had things that I've worked on. It's like, it just didn't pan out. It's like, okay, I survived. It's like,
Right.
still in the game, get to do the next one, right? And so I think that's part of the entrepreneurial game, right? Is like getting into that mindset of like understanding, what it takes to take something from, very infancy to some level of maturity, and then you get antsy and you want to go do something different, right? So I've kind of seen it
Yes.
in my career. It's usually about every 7 years. It's like, okay, I'm tired of, and maybe that's personal reflection. It's like the market, and like, okay, I need to personally work on something different, because I'm
Okay.
getting,
Mhm.
you get burned out and tired of doing the same old thing over and over. So
That's very true. Very true. So with all this success, what what struggles does Randall have? What does Randall still face today?
oh, my biggest struggle is I'm getting older, right? It's like I thought I was, I thought I had, like, infinity to work. I just enjoy working on these things so much. It's like, but now I'm like, my mid 50s. My wife reminds me, you're past the mids. You're like approaching the
That's
late
not
50s.
nice.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of that, like, okay, how much, and as you do get older, it's like you just kind of like, different things take your attention. I enjoy, time with family uh
Mhm.
and doing other things. I spend a lot, more time with my friends. We go on vacations together every summer, and just those parts of life that I maybe in the early part was missing, right? Because I was just really driven around the business. So that changes as you get older, and just a little bit more thoughts around that. The Yeah, that's probably the biggest. I from a what we're working on technology wise, I try to stay current and always, trying to see what we can do to fit into what's going on, the changes that are going on in the market. So I stay active mentally, and
Yeah.
thinking about those kinds of things. And then as we continue to grow the team, right, it's like, okay, can we bring good people in to, fill these slots and
Yeah,
continue to propel the business. So,
absolutely. I'm the same age. I, I,
oh yeah.
I I know the feeling, and for me, if I can add to like what you just said, there's just an awareness I didn't have before, and that really kind of created the name, the balancing act. When I think about myself as a younger person, and I still have the bad habit of having lots of things going on, just as yourself, right? But it's just something in the makeup keeps keeps us going, keeps us satisfied to have all these things. But I have reached a new level where I'm thinking about the balancing act, and I do find myself having some some regret of the past where I gave no credit to the need for balancing and maintaining time. So when something would get in, like if I just had to disrupt an entire family vacation, I just disrupt it because
Yeah.
things, and that's hard. It's hard for me to say at this point in time, you should not disrupt the family vacation. You should stay balanced. You should stay balanced, but it's hard for me to say to someone, risk that with your business. So do you have advice there? What would you say to a younger person who's just filled with energy, you know, do you have any advice there? What would you say?
Well, I've been kind of lucky that our business it's very kind of long term. So there's very little that can't wait till tomorrow, right? So
Okay. Okay.
so that being in a business that doesn't, I mean, if all of a sudden our servers go down and the service is off, there's a panic. Luckily, knock on wood, that doesn't happen very
Yeah.
often. But that causes like, but otherwise we have, really kind of long term. So that allows me and us to be like, okay, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks on vacation. I don't have to. And in fact, the way I've kind of organized my own life, I work 10 or 11 hours a day, probably on average. I arrive at 7:30 and I leave at between 6 and 7 o'clock. Right. So it's like, and that includes, eating some lunch or, doing something in between there. But that's just kind of my like pace of, hey, this is a good long day. I can get a lot done. And then when I go home, it's literally when I walk out the door, I'm not working anymore. So I try not to. Doesn't mean ever that you don't, but I go home and I just want to drink a beer, settle down, have dinner with my wife,
Yeah.
watch YouTube or TV or catch up on something in the evenings. And I'm not like always in my email and trying to respond. I don't. So I kind of separate my life into like, okay, chill time and work time. And I do that separation. And then, when I go on vacation, I take my iPad and I've got it. People can access me and I might peek in every once in a while at something,
Yeah.
but one, the operation is still running without me.
Right. Yes.
And there's nothing that can't wait until I get back. So it's like I don't feel a ton of pressure. Different businesses may require, right, a different,
Could tend to interruptions.
could yeah, it could be more tied, in problems that are going on. So for me, that's worked out pretty well. I've been able to kind of segment that, and I feel like the other just kind of piece of advice, I've kind of got this, I've kind of tried to develop this theory of like what makes people happy. This is obviously there's lots of different people and lots of different things that make people happy, but I kind of have bifurcated. You can bifurcate and say, are you producing or are you consuming in life? And what I think my theory is that when people find their work or what they're doing, what they're producing, you're a musician,
Yeah.
producing, that's a production, right? And it could be taking care of a family. You're doing something that gives you reward and value in producing. That's why I think businesses are very healthy. If you can find something where you've got a customer base and you're helping them or serving them through your product or service, it's a rewarding thing. And
Yes.
I think, and then the opposite of that is consumption. We all consume, but I think what makes for a healthy life is be a net producer, not a net consumer.
Yes. Oh.
And if that's maybe 51-49 is good enough. But I think the people that actually end up being like 90% production and 10%, I've kind of gotten to this point in life where it's like I don't want or need anything. I've kind of got like I don't
Yes.
lust for things. I don't need a new if those things come, you can consume them, but it doesn't drive me. I love coming to work and working on these problems. And I think it's like for myself, it's made me like, okay, I'm evergreen. This is as pleased as I can be. And I play guitar too. It's like, okay, I bought myself a new Les Paul for my birthday last year. It's
Yeah.
like, that's all I need. It's like it's like I don't need a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I've seen other people though that are like always wanting to buy something or needing or wanting, and I just kind of lump that into the consumption. Like you never have enough, and I think you'll just never be happy. Anyway, that's very
Yeah.
philosophical,
I
but
think, yeah, I think you're onto an incredible quote. I think you better write that down, put your name on it. And that's wonderful. And it's true. I agree wholeheartedly. More
well,
production.
I'll tell you where the origins of that, how long I've been thinking about it. There was this mini series that was produced by PBS back in the 90s about the tech industry. It was called like Revenge of the Geeks or something. I don't know. It was like chronicling Microsoft and all those early stories of tech. And they were interviewing about Bill Gates, right? And in the 90s, right, he was already wealthy, but not nearly to the extreme that Microsoft's become now and the amount of wealth. But they were interviewing somebody that worked with Gates, and the interviewer asked them, now that, make up this number, now that Bill Gates is worth $100 million, like, has he changed? What's changed? And the person that worked with him said something to the effect of, what Bill told me was at some point, I can't eat any better food. I can't stay in a better hotel. I can't, and I internalize that. And I'm like, you're right. And that's about consumption. At some point, I can't consume anymore,
Yes.
and it's not going to make me any happier. I don't care how much wealth I've got. It's not going to make me any happier. And
Yeah.
so I just really internalized that. And I'm like, wow, he still gets up and goes to work every day. Why? You can
He
look
doesn't
at
have
all
to.
the
Yeah.
people
He could
that are
just lay
uber
around and
successful.
consume.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they of course they consume and they can have nice things, but that's not what drives them, right? It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's that, and hopefully they're happy in that they've found this. Hey, I'm a net producer in the world. Yeah, it gave me the ability to consume at some other astronomical level, but that's probably not what they're interested in, right?
Oh,
Anyway,
that is a great answer. And yeah, I'm going to close on that because I mean, that's really good philosophical thought. Just the recognition of production, the giving, the doing more than the
it's
consuming.
embedded in a lot of things, right? In religion and all the stories
Yes.
and just life stories of people. It's like if you can find that balance where you're a net producer instead of a net consumer, I think you're probably going to
You're
be
in the
just
right place. Yeah.
yeah.
Randall, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn from you, learn about the courses you instruct, or learn about Avail or anything, Or how would they get in touch with you?
Probably the best is find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on there and connect and send me a direct message or something. And then, yeah, or you can come to any of these companies' websites and find me on there too. So,
Yeah, awesome. Well, to our viewers and listeners, that wraps up another episode of The Balancing Act. And I do hope that you enjoyed it. I hope it seemed of value for you. Again, my name is Cary Shields. And until next time, stay in balance.
thanks, Cary.
Thank you.